Saturday afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us once again. We are so happy to see you. I feel like it's been a long time.
It is a long time, but we're loving it.
Yes, since Ed and I have been here. If you are watching live or watching the replay and you don't know who we are Edward and Debbie Smith.
Mm-hmm.
We are the Family Life Coordinators for Church of the Oranges, Koto in Orange, New Jersey. And every Saturday afternoon, Family Life is here at 3 p.m., giving you some content, some topics that are relevant to families.
But babe, let's talk a little bit about last week's Sabbath.
Yes.
Last week's Sabbath, we had worship in the parking lot. And boy, was it good. It was so good to see so many people that we have not seen in years.
In months.
It felt like years. Some of us have lost weight. Some of us have gained some weight. You understand me? And some of us stayed in our cars and just would not go out and go amongst the people. Like, I'm not gonna point on the finger, but some of us were out mingling with people, and it was so good overall, seeing everybody. The service was to the point. We had praise and worship, and a little sermonette, and people giving testimonies and stuff. It was so good. It was so refreshing.
Yeah,
seeing everybody.
Yeah. It was a really good time. And guess what? This morning we did it again. So
yes.
Hopefully, you were able to come out or at least catch it live. So we're happy to be here. We hope that you have been enjoying the content that have been coming out from Family Life over the past couple of weeks. We've had women's ministry, men's ministry, and Forever Young. We want to make sure that we are touching every family member in the household. So with that in mind, we want to remind you that next Thursday, October 8th at 7 p.m., there will be a prostate cancer seminar. It says for men only. I think the ladies should be able to attend. Sometimes we're the ones that, notice signs and have to take you guys to the doctor, but it does say men only. So make sure, men, we need you to be safe. We need you to be healthy. We need you to be well. So make sure you are following the Koto page so you can get all of the information about that.
And so let us rest there for a little bit. And let us talk to the men. Men, I know most of us, not all of us, but most of us don't like going to the doctor. I get up this morning, I'm feeling fine, so I'm fine, and so listen, these illnesses, when they come upon us, oftentimes they don't really give you a warning sign.
Yeah.
So men, let us get up, let us go out. It is free. Let us go out and get ourselves tested, to make sure that we're good, we're okay. Because guess what? We have our wives, we have our children, we have our grandchildren, and we want to live for a long time to see our grandchildren have their children and stuff. So let's go out and get tested.
Yeah, so that is Thursday, October 8th. It's at 7 p.m. And make sure you go to the Koto website to get the Zoom information for that. And then on Saturday, October the 10th, at 8 p.m., we're having a Laugh Out Loud virtual comedy night. So make sure, guys, you're following the Church of the Oranges page. We have so much going on, and we just wanted to, spend a few moments and let you know about some of those things, because things can get really heavy.
Absolutely.
We're still battling COVID. We're still battling racial injustice. We have the election coming up. So things are very tense and heavy right now. So why not take an hour to just laugh?
Yeah, take off your shoes, put up your feet.
Yes.
Laugh.
And laugh. And laugh. So we are so excited because today we got some emails.
Oh.
Yay! We like when we get emails from you, so please continue to send your emails, your questions, your comments, your feedback to family@kotosda.org. family@kotosda.org.
Right.
So here is our first email. A few weeks ago, there was a men's session on male tears. It was very interesting. My question is, how does a man in his 60s who was taught not to cry all of a sudden begin to shed tears? And when is it appropriate to do so? Whew, that's a really good question.
It's a really good question. And I guess by way of default, because I'm a man,
that's okay. I have an answer, but you can go ahead first.
I know you have an answer, baby. But here's what it is. Emotions are something that you were born with. Society dictate to us that we should have it bottled up inside of us because it's not masculine to do so. It's not manly to do so. And so we bottle these things up inside of us, and we just don't. When is a good time for you to cry? Whenever that emotion shows up, am I saying that you ought to cry every time? Because after a while it can become crazy. The speaker spoke about there are times that men can get away with their tears, and it is the death of a family. It is okay for you to cry without being judged. When your favorite team, sports team wins, it's okay for you to cry without being judged. Whenever there's an altar call, and so the pastor preaches and there's an altar call, there's something that grabs you, it is okay to walk up, cry without being judged, and I think he gave 4, but I can't remember the 4th one. But what he says that was so interesting is that, he said, our emotions have a very short shelf life. Give that man, 2 weeks after or a week after, those things may happen, and that man cry, he's gonna be judged again. So here's what it is. Don't show your emotion based on what society says, but show your emotion based on what is going on inside of you, how it's affecting you. I really think it's okay, for men to cry. It's okay for him to cry in front of his children, in front of his family, his wife. I cried, many a times in front of you. I'm not a crybaby, but but I cried many a times in front of you. I cried many a times in front of my children, and even in public. I have, and you're not less of a leader, when you show your emotions. God made that within you. So I think that you should, whenever it comes,
Yeah. So I think we're on the same page with that. One of the things that the speaker kept saying is that although we're using tears, it's not about crying. Right? It's about your emotions.
Right.
And so it's okay to express your emotions. That's the point that we're trying to get across. If your emotions causes you to weep, then by all means weep. I think for so long, men have been okay expressing only one emotion, and that's anger. When I'm angry, I'm going to show it. I'm going to show my displeasure to, my family members. They're going to know that I'm upset or I'm disappointed. You're not so good at showing hurt. Oftentimes hurt gets expressed as anger. And so what we're trying to say is, it's okay to express whatever emotion you are feeling. And you start wherever you are. We're not saying to burst into tears when you and your spouse get into an argument. That's not what we're saying, because she's going to look at you like you're crazy.
What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?
But what we're saying is, begin to practice using your feeling words. I feel overwhelmed. It's okay to say that to your spouse. I feel overwhelmed, or I feel sad, I feel disappointed, I feel down, I feel depressed. We want all of us, male and female, boys, girls, men, women, to be able to express their emotion. We don't want you to keep your emotion bottled up. And it's appropriate to do so whenever you're feeling it.
Right.
So hopefully that answers you. If not, feel free to email us again and we will take another stab at it.
Absolutely.
And then we had one more. This is a quick email. Hi, brother and sister Smith. I am a forever younger.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I love that.
Okay.
I am a forever younger, and thank you for the info on estate planning last week. It was very informative. How can we get a copy of the slides? Great question. There might be others who have the same question. So what we're going to do is reach out to Sister Valencia, Sister Donna, and try to get that information up on the Koto webpage. So we'll try to create a spot on the webpage where you can find, past content. And you can certainly go back to YouTube, go back to Facebook, and you can replay the video, but we'll definitely try to get a copy of the slides up on the website for you. Okay?
Awesome. So this today we're going to talk about 10 ways of fighting fear. The unfortunate thing about relationship is a lot of time people think that the perfect relationship is that there are no conflict. We don't fight, and that is so far from the truth.
Right.
People do fight, but there's something called fighting fear. What should that look like? Everybody has conflict because your spouse is not the clone of you, right? It's a total different person with their own thoughts, their own everything. So you're going to have conflict. But when you have conflict, how do you both come out as winner is contingent on how you approach your conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. And today we're gonna talk a lot about spouses and husband and wife, but we're also want to bring it to parents and children. This is conflict management for all relationships.
Absolutely.
Okay. So are you ready for the rules?
Yeah, let's go, baby.
Let's go. Rule number 1, no winning.
Come on.
No winning.
Come on.
So
come on.
If you're part of a sports team, you play sports, you're like me, you're very competitive, you want to win at everything. Family game night, you want to win. Like there has to be a winner. But when you're talking about conflict management, you're talking about handling that conflict within your family,
right.
There are no winners.
Right.
Let me say that again. There should be no losers.
Right.
Everybody should be a winner. If you go into that argument, that disagreement, that conflict, and you want to come out a winner and the person that you're in conflict with is a loser, you both lose.
Yeah. Remember now that, before conflict, and this is the way that I put it. Before conflict, there was a dance, let's say between wife and husband, or even between family, there was a dance, there was a synergy, right? And let's talk about the dance as though it is a, what they call it, those 3 steps dance, and so you're moving in sync with each other. What conflict does is that it comes in and it interferes with the dance. So now when it interferes with the dance, now you're stepping on each other's toe, and you're no longer in sync. You're no longer moving to the rhythm. And so that's what conflicts really, it interfere. So it's for you to stop and look at the conflict and say, listen, I'm enjoying my dance, right? And because I'm enjoying my dance, something is happening that is interfering with my enjoyment, which is the conflict. So now together we figure out how can we remove the conflict so we can go back to the dance.
Back to the dance. Yeah. Absolutely. So when you're in conflict, remember, you are not out to win a victory over your spouse, but you want to build your relationship. And Proverbs 17:27 reminds us, the intelligent person restrains his words.
Yes.
And one who keeps a cool head is a man of understanding.
Mercy.
So rule number 1, no winning, or maybe we should change that to no losers.
Yeah,
You
we could
both
change.
need to
Yeah,
win.
yeah, you both need to win.
Yeah.
Because if one party wins and the other one loses, then
you're both losers.
you
Yeah.
both are losers.
Yeah. So that's rule number 1. Rule number 2, no running. No running. So here is a picture of how folks run when they're in conflict.
Right.
So you have one person, this is one example of running. I'm going to say my piece, I'm going to drop a bomb, and I'm going to walk out in the middle of the disagreement.
But not only walk out, but I'm going to walk out, slam the door, and I'm out.
Yes, I'm going to, drop my bomb, and I'm going to go.
Right.
And then you have the other person who says nothing, just runs from conflict, doesn't want the confrontation, doesn't want to have the discussion, doesn't even want to say that they're upset. But it often comes out in other ways. So go to close the cabinet, slam the cabinet door. You go to put the cup down, you slam the cup. So everything becomes really forceful. So even though you're not verbalizing that you're upset or angry, your actions show that something is going on.
And may I add here as well, babe, that temper your approach towards each other, right? Because if you come to me and say, babe, can I speak to you for a few minutes? And I'm like, what? And so the facial expression and this annoyance, it does not welcome a good way for me to communicate with you, or even you to communicate with me, because if every time I mention your name or call your attention to something, you have that annoyance look on your face, or sometimes you don't even recognize my voice that I'm calling you, and babe, don't you hear me? Yeah, I hear you. You understand me? But you're not even looking at me or anything like that. It is, so, let us remember that your spouse is your best friend, is your partner. And so whatever affects your spouse, by way of default, should affect you.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a good one to talk to parents a little bit about how we handle and manage conflict with our children. Sometimes our children don't feel comfortable coming and speaking to us about things that are bothering them, issues, or if we upset them or hurt them, they get the feeling that their feelings don't matter. I'm the parent, I make the rules, what I say go, you have no say. And we have to temper that just a little bit. And we need to allow our children the room to express in a respectful manner how they feel and what's going on. One of the things that we say to couples that we're counseling and to families that we're counseling is to have those family meetings, right? Where you bring everyone together and you have those conversations. It's a time of, hey, let's lay it all on the table. What has worked well this week? What hasn't worked well this week? What has upset you this week? And talk through it. Allow family members the opportunity and the room and the safe space to share what they are feeling.
And this part here, I must say this, when it comes on to parent children, I would recommend that as parent, before you have family meeting, as parent, you call your personal meeting first and you go over stuff, because the reason for that, because you want to make sure that you both are on the same page in front of the children, because the children are smarter than you think. And the moment they pick up on the vibration of, okay, there is a difference between mom and dad, they're going to play into those differences. And so you want to make sure that you're on the same page. And even if you were not to have a meeting beforehand, and one parent to say something, you have to show that moral support. Later on you could say to your spouse, babe, da 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 da, but you have to endorse each other. It is so vital, it is so important that you do that. And and we find this disparity amongst blended family, because oftentimes the biological parents will want to take side of the child or children, and vice versa. And you know, there's a lot of different dynamics that is going on. However, to bring harmony in the home, you have to be on the same page as parents.
Yeah. And it's okay to disagree, right? It's okay to disagree, but it's in the way that we disagree,
Absolutely.
right? It's in the way that we do it. What happens when we don't address issues, when we don't voice our displeasure or dissatisfaction, is that we begin to emotionally withdraw from the relationship. And that's a romantic relationship, a platonic relationship, parent-child relationship. If one party feels that they can't express how they feel, they begin to really suppress those emotions, and they begin to emotionally withdraw. So really, really important. So rule number 1 was no winning and losing. Rule number 2, no running. And rule number 3, shut it, zip it, and learn how to listen.
Wait, babe, before you go to rule number 3, may I say also in rule number 2, there is no sleeping in separate beds. Not because you're mad at each other, you're going to go to the other room and I don't feel like sleeping in the room with you tonight. You know, you're going to have your conflict and go to bed together.
That's right. So rule number 3, shut it, zip it, lock it in your pocket, and listen. We all want to be heard, but you can't hear when you're talking. So we have to learn how to stop talking and listen to what the other person is saying, and not just listening with our ears while we're doing 50 other things, but actively listening, engaging in the conversation, looking at the person when they're speaking to you, letting them know that you're listening to them.
So how about the person that listens to prepare their rebuttal?
Well, that's not active listening.
Okay.
You're not listening if you're preparing your response before the person can even finish what they're saying. We all want to feel that we're understood and that we're heard. But again, you can't hear the other person if you're talking. And so it's really, really important that we practice this, because a lot of us, we are just good at fixing our lips to come back with a response. But, and so we have this natural tendency to interrupt the other person. And often it's because we honestly feel that our point is so important and so much more important than what the other person is saying. And that's just not the case. Both parties have a right to how they feel. No one's feeling is more important than the other person. Your point is not important than the other person, even if you think that you're right and they're wrong. Listen.
So listen to understand. And understanding your spouse is very important, because you cannot respond to your spouse. You cannot do anything that creates that synergy, that oneness with your spouse, until you understand your spouse. So in order for you to understand, you have to listen. You will not only just listening, but pay attention to the things that he or she's doing or saying, because there's a lot of times that, you know, your spouse may be verbalizing stuff, but there are something called nonverbal things that is going on undertone. And so you will miss those things if you're not being an active listener.
And the same goes for us as parents, right? I remember there was a time when I wasn't working, and whenever the kids came home, I wanted to make sure things were done. So I didn't want anyone to come home and, you know, dinner wasn't done and the place. So I would just be busy. And I remember specifically one day, Zaria, our middle child, came home and she's talking to me, but my back is turned and I'm at the stove and I'm cooking, because I feel like, okay, I'm being a good mom, you know. And she says, "Mom, can you please turn around and look at me?" And from that day forward, I realized that, you know, when our kids are speaking to us, we need to pay attention. Sometimes their body language tells us more than their words. If you say, "How was your day?" and they say fine and run to their room, but you haven't been able to look them in the eyes and see their body language, you might be missing some really critical signs.
Absolutely.
So again, pay attention, listen, focus on what's being said. And this takes practice, right? Because there are some households where they're so used to the interruptions that this is going to take practice.
It becomes a norm.
Right. So what we suggest you do is that you get an object, whatever object you want. Sometimes we give our clients a piece of tile and we say, this is the floor. When you have the tile, you have the floor, which means I'm not speaking at all. I'm listening, I'm looking at you, and when you're done, you give me the floor, and now the floor is yours, and I get a chance to now speak and say my piece. So if that's what it takes for you to practice listening, please do so. It's really, really critical.
And more than anything, I always recommend change your outlook. Change the way you receive stuff, the way you hear stuff. If you can change that, you will change the way you respond to it.
Absolutely. Rule number 4 is very important. If you don't get anything else from these 10 rules, please make sure you get rule number 4. Rule number 4 is to check your weapons. Somebody needs to be typing that in the chat. Check your weapons.
Put down your M16.
Yeah.
Put down the bazooka.
Yes. Words can do real damage. I think the worst thing that we could ever say or do or implant in our children is that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me.
Lie.
A lie from the pit of hell.
Right. Words
hurt and words have power. And what tends to happen is when you're in a disagreement, when you're in a heated argument, when you're in intense fellowship, you want to use the most hurtful words that you can. You want to annihilate the other person. And babe, I have to say to my women, my ladies, our mouth can be dangerous. I had to begin to check my weapons, y'all. I had to I'm going to the fight with no weapons, because if I pull out my weapons, it's going to be the point of no return. So we have to be careful. We have to not to attack our spouses, not to attack our children with our words. You can't take them back once they come out of your mouth.
And this is the reason why, as much as possible, you should try and resolve the issue. Unfortunately, there are some issues that you can't resolve, but you can definitely manage them. But those that you can resolve them, because when you don't, what happens is that is filed in a cabinet somewhere in the back of your mind, and so you later on pull that out as a weapon when you are in a heated, as my wife said, intense fellowship. You pull out that weapon and you start to and so you have to try to resolve the ones that are resolvable. And whenever you resolve them, please don't go back to them a month from now, 2 months from now, 6 months from now. Don't do that. It's been resolved. Resolve it. Stop holding each other hostage in 6 months ago, 5 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago. Don't do that.
Yeah. Great point. And you know what? As Christians, there are words and phrases that we should never use in our homes. Not to our spouses, not to our children. We should not resort to name calling. We should not resort to cursing. We just should not allow ourselves to go there. And so if you feel yourself going there, first of all, you have to check what's on the inside of you, right? Because when you squeeze an orange, orange juice comes out of it. What is going to come out of you when you're squeezed? If it's cuss words, then you need a change of heart. You need, you need to be converted.
Right.
And so we have to be careful of the things that we say. We have to be careful that we're not attacking one another, that we're not being verbally abusive. We're not name calling, and it goes the same for our children. Parents, I know back home, they called you everything but a child of God. I get it. That's how you were raised. But when you know better, you have to do better. Right. So stop attaching labels to our children. Lazy, dirty, nasty.
You will never amount to anything.
You'll never amount to anything. Stop labeling and heaping those negative words onto one another. The Bible says that the power of life and death is in our tongues. And so we have to use our tongues for life and not for death. Rule number 5 is to keep it private. Keep it private.
We're going to have to unpack that.
I am. Okay. Yeah. So, Ed mentioned earlier this united front that you want to have in front of your children. And it's the same when you're out in public. Okay. The church should not know that you and your spouse just had a disagreement before you came to church. Okay.
Intense fellowship
Before you came to church. Now, when we say keep it private, that doesn't mean that if something is happening in your home and you need help, that you should not seek help. We have to make that abundantly clear, because some people will hear this and say, well, what happens in our house stays in our house. And meanwhile, you're punching your husband or, you're kicking your wife. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about disagreements that happen between husband and wife. You want to keep your business private is what we're saying. We're saying that, if Ed and I get into an argument, that I'm not picking up the phone and I'm not calling, 5 people from the church. Girl, you know what he did this time? That doesn't help the situation. It doesn't help your husband. It doesn't help your relationship. So that's what we mean by keeping it private.
Right.
Sorry, babe, my last thing. When you have an issue with your spouse, you need to go to your spouse and talk about that issue. I can't help you resolve the issue with your spouse unless you're both coming to us for counseling. That's not to say that, if you need to vent, that you don't have a friend that you tell certain things to. That's okay. But everybody shouldn't know, oh, my husband don't wash no dishes at home. And that's, you have to protect your marriage. You have to protect your spouse. And so keep your business to yourself. When you are in a situation where you need help, you reach out and you get the help that you need. Those things you don't keep private. Those things you have to shed the light on, because the more you keep it in darkness, the more power and hold that it has over you.
Yeah. And so we're talking about fighting fear, and we're talking about the fundamentals that comes with fighting disagreement and stuff. The Bible speaks about covering your spouse, covering each other.
Love covers.
Love covers. So you want to make sure that you are in public, you covers as it relates to those fundamentals. However, there's another part of fighting, as my wife touched on, which is the physical abuse, the verbal abuse, and the emotional abuse, and the financial abuse and stuff, but let me stay right a little bit on the physical abuse. If you're at home and you become a punching bag, you first need to find a safe place, right? And find that safe place and stay at that safe place until your spouse gets the help that he or she needs. It is very important because, especially physical abuse does not start with just with actual physical abuse. It starts with the verbal abuse. It starts with the punching at the wall. It starts with the throwing furnitures. It starts with a whole lot of things. So, if you are physically abused, or you see traits of the, find a safe place to go to, and support your spouse in getting the help that he or she needs, so that they can be better.
Yeah, and folks, even if you're being emotionally,
Absolutely.
mentally abused, that can weigh down on you. It can beat down on you. It can cause physical ailments and illnesses. So get to a safe place where you can get the healing that you need. And like Ed said, support your spouse in getting the help that they need. Another thing when it comes to keeping private, don't get your children in the middle of your disagreements.
Mercy.
Don't have it where your children are now choosing sides and they have an attitude with daddy because, mommy told them that daddy's being mean to her. That's not a good place for your children to be. It leads to major dysfunction. And so learn how to resolve your conflict with one another.
Yes.
Talk through it, pray through it, cry through it, fight through it, but do it together.
Right. Learn to say that you're sorry. Saying that
that's one of the rules.
Okay, that's one of the rules. Oh, my apologies. I forgot.
Jumping the gun. Jumping the gun. So, quick recap. Number 1, no winning or losing. Number 2, no running. Number 3, shut it, zip it, and learn to listen. Number 4, check your weapons.
Absolutely.
And number 5 was keep it private. Number 6, take the volume down.
That tone, man.
Tone is another rule, so don't jump. No, we're talking volume.
Yeah, well, volume and tone, doesn't it go hand in hand?
That's why they're next to each other. They're tied together, but volume is separate.
Right. But for I want to say though, but for me, I am a very emotional speaker. And especially whenever I have a strong feeling, when I believe in something very strongly, I get emotional. So the more emotional I get, the more the volume goes up. And so it's the same way in a marital relationship. Even though I may be, I may have that tone about me, it can come across as something else. So it's very important to keep the volume,
So this is a really tricky one, right? Because yes, we do get passionate and sometimes our volume goes up. But I'll tell you, the worst thing that you can do in an argument is to tell the other person to calm down. Or why are you raising your voice? You lower your voice and see if that person will bring their volume up. But what tends to happen, what tends to happen is I start yelling and you start yelling. So the more you yell, the more I yell. So we have to get to a place where we are in control of ourselves, where we can say, man, my volume is really going up. And mentally go into a space where you can begin to bring the volume down. What we tried to do is to match one another's level of intensity. He's gonna yell, so I'm gonna yell too. We have to learn to bring the volume down. The Bible talks about peacemakers, and peacekeepers, and it also says that as much as possible, live at peace with all men. It certainly applies to the men and women in your house. The man that you marry, the woman that you marry, it applies there. So bring the volume down. So number 7 is check your tone. Check your tone. How well do you receive criticism? How well do you give criticism? So Ed and I are actually in the midst of doing a 40-day fast. We're on day 11, day 12. And this is a fast that I have done. This is my 3rd time doing it. And there is a workbook that comes with it. And so last night when we were doing the reading and then the workbook, one of the questions, I forget what the question was, but my response was, that I need to watch my attitude. I need to have a better attitude. And I have to stop wanting to be in control all the time. And I think sometimes our tone can be so harmful. even though we might not be saying anything mean, it's the way that we say it.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you've heard that. It's
Mhm.
not what you say,
But
it's
it's
how you say it.
Mhm.
So we have to watch our tone. There will be times in a marriage where one spouse has to challenge the behavior of the other spouse. We are
Mhm.
here to help each other grow and to become more holy and more like Christ.
Come on.
So there are going to be times when I have to say to Ed, that wasn't,
Mhm.
the most Christ-like thing, that
Mhm.
your response was not, appropriate. It's not what I would expect. And so how well do you receive that? Does your tone go automatically defensive because someone is trying to correct you? Or are you willing to hear what the person is saying and take what is relevant for you and make the appropriate changes?
And the reason why, babe, what you're saying is so important, because we are very good at taking constructive criticism, right? But the ones that we deem not to be constructive, we have a different response to it, and we have a different tone to it, and and we oftentimes use word like there's nothing wrong, I'm saying it this way because don't justify it. If I am receiving it the way that as something harsh, pay attention to that and said, I apologize. That's not my intention. And you can probably reformat your statement, or rephrase your statement or something to that effect. But don't just this is who I am and it is what it is, and all that stuff, because I can assure you that the conversation is not going to go much further from there.
Yeah. And so your approach, like you were saying, is everything. So one of the exercises that we do with couples when we're counseling them is to teach them how to use I statements instead of you statements. When you approach a conversation and you automatically start off by you, it's very accusatory. And so that person immediately puts up their defenses, and they're ready to protect themselves and defend themselves and defend their character. But if you start off by using I statements, I feel, then that takes on a total different meaning. So for example, maybe your spouse drives really fast and it scares you. Instead of saying, you're such a terrible driver, babe, I feel very unsafe when you're doing 80 miles an hour on the highway. Same thing. You're a terrible driver because you're going so fast. But you want to use those, lead with those I statements. I feel unsafe when you do 80 miles an hour instead of you're a bad driver.
And then your safety should be my concern. So it causes me to take you.
Exactly. Rule number 8, you were so eager to get here. Rule number 8 is to say I'm sorry. Say I'm sorry. And I'm gonna let you say what you always say about saying I'm sorry.
Oh, a lot of times, we have a hard time with that word, to say that I'm sorry, and I've always stated that saying that you're sorry does not mean that you were right and the person was wrong, but it's saying that, my relationship with you is more important than my ego that is preventing me from saying that I'm sorry.
Yeah. And so saying I'm sorry is not just about who's right and who's wrong. Saying I'm sorry is about just being sorry that we're here, sorry that you're hurting, sorry that, our emotions got the best of us. That's really what that means.
Sorry that I contributed to whatever is happening.
Right, to whatever is happening. Sometimes you can hurt you can hurt the other person without even realizing that you're hurting them. And so once that's pointed out to you, say I'm sorry. And it's not, I'm sorry if you feel this way.
Or I'm sorry that you feel this way. Yeah, that's
I'm sorry that I hurt you.
Right.
I'm sorry that, the situation got so out of control. I'm sorry for the part that I played in this conflict. And we have to say here, parents, it is okay to apologize to your children.
Absolutely.
That doesn't make you any less of a parent. We make mistakes too. Sometimes we jump to conclusions. Sometimes we, go from 0 to 60 without hearing the whole story. And it's okay to go back and say, you know what? I overreacted. I apologize.
And make fun of it. Make fun of it. You understand me? There are a lot of time for us, babe. For me, let me talk about me. I jump to conclusion because my brain is always going 10,000 miles an hour. I jump to conclusion, and I will hear little things, and I will say it to the kids, oh, da 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 da, and I will, and so it will turn into a big, pops, that's not what I meant, and so they will go. So quickly I will like, oh, my bad. That's my bad. I never thought of it like that. And so just by you doing that, it diffuses the issue, right? And no matter how much that child may be at a 10, because I misspoke, the fact that I came in humbly, like, oh, my bad. My bad. I did not think of it. It diffuses, and the child comes all the way back down to a 1 or a 0.
Yeah. Very, very important. And the Bible reminds us that we should confess our faults one to another. No one is without fault when there's conflict. So accept the role that you play, accept the part that you played, accept your contribution to the situation, and apologize for saying that thing, for overreacting, for allowing it to get out of control, for, participating in the silent treatment, whatever it is. It's okay to apologize. Apologizing requires humility.
Yes.
And too many of us, the reason why we can't apologize is because we don't know how to humble ourselves. We have no humility. It's all about pride, and I have to be right, and I have to have the last word, and I'm not going to be the first one to apologize.
And one other thing before you move on, babe, that I hate hearing is, I don't see why I should apologize. I have nothing to apologize for. I don't see. Here's what it is. Because you're trying to find whether or not you were right or wrong. To apologize, but like I've stated before, apologizing has little or nothing to do with right or wrong. It has everything to do with the fact that I just played a role, a part into interfering with the synergy, interfering with the oneness. You understand me? I played a part, no matter how minuscule it may be. I just played a part in a process. That's what you're apologizing for. Or
even if you feel that you didn't play a part, I'm sorry that you're hurting.
Right.
Just as simple as that. I'm sorry that you're hurting. Goes a really, really long way. And so number 9 is the counterpart of saying I'm sorry, which is forgive freely, forgive often, become a chronic forgiver. Once you're a part of a family, you have to learn how to forgive.
Mercy.
Because the members of your family will mess up. They're going to hurt you. They're going to make mistakes.
Absolutely.
We have to learn how to forgive freely. When somebody says I'm sorry, don't keep it going. When they extend that olive branch to you, accept the olive branch. Right. Be willing to forgive quickly and often, because without it, we are going to find ourselves in a lot of issues.
Yes.
Your children come and they apologize for whatever it is. Offer your forgiveness, mend that relationship, and move on. Too many times we allow that thing to linger, and our children come and they apologize, and we're still holding on, and we're bitter. We have to let go of it. We have to learn how to forgive.
Yeah, and I can tell you right now, there are a lot of us that really have problem with forgiving or forgiveness. This is something that you're not going to master overnight. It's not, so it is you have to start forgiving with the little things, because when the big things faces you, if you do not have control over the little things, you won't have control over the big things.
Yeah. And the Bible tells us if we don't forgive others,
come on, yeah,
we're not going to be forgiven.
yeah.
And I know I need God to forgive me because I need to make it into the kingdom. So we have to learn how to forgive our family members.
Absolutely.
And you know, we get this all the time. Are you saying that I need to forgive so-and-so who did this to me when I was... Listen, forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation, but here we're talking about forgiveness within your home, right? So yes, your children and your spouse, but you may have other people in your family, in your life that you need to forgive. And maybe there is no hope of reconciliation. That's okay. Forgiveness doesn't mean that we're reconciled and we're bosom buddies again, or I'm going to allow you access to hurt me like you hurt me before.
Right.
Forgiveness releases you from the anger.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's where we need you to go. And finally, number 10, rule number 10 is to pray together. So some people say, well, why isn't that, rule number 1? We put it as rule number 10 because we want you to end every conflict in prayer. End disagreements with prayer, reuniting with one another before God.
And here's one of the reasons why it is very difficult for you when you end a conflict, and it's very difficult that after you end it, you pray that you still hold on to it. Yeah. Because there's a lot of times we walk away from a conflict thinking that it is resolved, but in truth and in fact it is not. It was not, because it comes back up, a day after, a week after, or so. But oftentimes when you find yourself praying together, and the prayer is zeroing on the issue that you just had, and once you end it with prayer, oftentimes you don't really come back to that.
Yeah. And ending a conflict with prayer allows God to really begin the healing process.
Come on.
Because in our human strength, there isn't a lot that we can do. But when God puts his super to our natural, now you have supernatural powers. So he begins that healing process. He begins to wipe the memory clean of that thing so that there is no resentment building up. And so we have to allow room for the Holy Spirit and for God to really do his work in our families. It's hard to get to that vulnerable place. In fact, there are couples who don't pray together. It's such an intimate act. And so many people find it easier to get physically naked with one another than to get emotionally and spiritually naked with one another. And so this praying together allows for that reconciliation, for that healing to take place. And not just with husband and wife, but, again, even with our children, it's okay to reconcile and to come together and to pray together after there has been conflict or hurt feelings or things said. We need the power of the Holy Spirit to take away some of those negative things that we say to one another in anger, because if we try to forget it on our own, it doesn't go away. And so then that bitterness and that resentment begins to build up. So quickly, we're going to run through those 10 things again. Hopefully you guys were taking note and writing them down, but we'll run through them again real quick. So rule number 1, no winning or losing. Rule number 2, no running. Don't try to avoid the conflict. Rule number 3, zip it, shut it, and listen. Rule number 4, check your weapons. Check your weapons. Rule number 5, keep it private. Don't get your family involved so that they choose sides. Because what happens? I tell my family something that you did. They're upset with you. We make up. We're good, and they're still mad at you.
They stay mad at me.
So keep it private. Rule number 6, take the volume down. Use your inside voices. Rule number 7, check your tone. It's not always what you say, but it's how you say it. Rule number 8, say I'm sorry. Rule number 9, forgive freely. And rule number 10 is to pray together.
Yeah, I know you. Rule number 9 says forgive freely, but you always say, babe, be a chronic forgiver.
Chronic forgiver.
Be a chronic forgiver. because being a chronic forgiver is take it to another level,
Mm-hmm.
another level where you realize is that it's not all about you anymore. It's about the situation, that I became a part of,
Right.
and I need to forgive so that I could move on.
Yeah. Yep. So that's what we have for you today. I know in the beginning, Ed talked about, listen, there is no conflict-free marriage or relationship. Even with your best friend, you're going to have some conflict. But we need to learn how to manage conflict. We need to learn how to exercise self-control, not let our mouth get away from us, not let our emotions get away from us. And it's something that we need to teach our children. And so we need to demonstrate it. We need to demonstrate what it looks like to be in a disagreement and to still, love on each other and be respectful of one another. So,
I always said, babe, this is not the hill that I want to die on.
You don't want to die on no hills.
This is not the hill that I want to die on. So how can we resolve this?
Yeah. So we hope that you got something from the quick tips that we shared with you today on how to fight fear. We all have to fight.
Yes.
We have to fight, but let's fight fairly. Let's not fight in such a way that we, leave each other laying in a heap on the floor, broken and in pieces. Let's watch our mouth. Let's use the power of our tongue to build one another up and not tear one another down.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yes. So listen, don't forget, we want to hear from you. Let us know which one of these 10 rules is most difficult for you so we can pray for you, because we all need prayer.
And how can they get in touch with us?
And how can you get in touch with us? family@cotosda.org. family@cotosda.org. If there's a topic that you want us to address, if you have a question, feel free to definitely email us. And remember, go to the website, check out the upcoming events. Remember the prostate event on the 8th. Remember the Laugh Out Loud comedy night on the 10th. And then for my ladies, we have some good things coming up, but stay tuned. We'll make those announcements at a later time. So once again, thank you for spending your 3:00 hour with us. We hope that you enjoyed it. Be sure to like the video, share it so that others can get this good information too. And we'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Be blessed.
Be blessed, everyone.